The story of Jesus is an encoded story. We hear about Bible codes all the time, and the New Testament is an encoded story. It's a symbolic story. And if you don't know the symbols, you're never going to figure out what the symbolic story that's encoded in it. Very interesting stuff when you get into the real story of Jesus. The history of Rome and the history of Europe and the history that's of America, there's a big story here that people have never been privy to be told. And boy, when you find out who these people really are and how this stuff actually works, you're going to be really amazed. If you take your time and takes a few years and go back and start studying where all this stuff has come from, it will lead you back to the Catholic Church, because you have to remember that for 2,700 years Rome has dominated Europe. Under the old Roman Empire, the Caesars were God, and they dominated Europe, and Europe dominated the world. And when the Roman Empire collapsed, it continued without let up, but now it was no longer called the Roman Empire, it was called the Roman Universal Religion, or the Roman Catholic, because Catholic simply means universal. This is why I found out many years ago, Universal Studios, the land was owned by the Catholic Church. That's why it's called Universal, because Catholic is Latin universal. I believe that the Catholic Church, my mother was Catholic, my whole family were Catholic, all my family were Catholic, my poor mother who's gone, my father, and my family were all Catholic. So I'm not criticizing the Catholic people. I'm talking about a corporation that was been in power for like 1,600 years. The Vatican has dominated Europe, and for 1,600 years, Europe has dominated the world. And so if you take the time to do the research, you will find that all of the stuff that's going on the earth today, all roads lead to Rome. You better look at the church and find out what's really going on in Rome and who the Pope really is. And Pope comes from a Latin word papa, and papa is a door, because your papa was the door to life. But you can't open a door without a hinge. So in Latin, a hinge is called a cardinal. So the Catholic Church is opening the doors, the Pope is opening the doors to the Babylonian mysteries of Dagon. And when you find out what Rome really is, a continuation of the Roman Empire, and that Caesar, under the ancient Roman system, Caesar was called Pontifex Maximus, or the great bridge builder. Well, today, that is the term that is given now to the Pope, Pontifex Maximus, the great bridge builder. Bridge builder being because he builds bridges to other nations, the Holy Father. And let me tell you one thing for damn sure, there is nothing holy in Rome. Ain't never been nothing holy in Rome. We're talking about Caesar. We're talking about pure power, the power of the sword. Fascism, world fascism. If you go to the World Book Encyclopedia and look up fascism, it's got an article on fascism, and it says, life under fascism, political life. In most cases, fascists have come to power after the nation has suffered an economic collapse, sound familiar? A military defeat, or some other disaster. The fascists win mass support by promising to revive the economy and restore national pride. They may also appeal to the fear of communism or hatred of Jews or other minorities. Usually a dictator with a great popular appeal becomes the leader of the government, and so the people put all their hopes and faith on him. Fascists permit no other political party, no opposition to their policies. The fascists desire national glory, leads to an increase in military spirit and a buildup of the armed forces. And after the military forces become strong, they may invade and occupy other countries. We're talking world fascism. The organizations, which consist both of workers and employees, are called corporations. Personal liberty is severely limited under a fascist government. The government also controls newspapers, radio, and other means of communication in the country. It issues propaganda to promote its policies and practices strict censorship to silence opposing views. That's what we have in America today, strict censorship. A fasci is a bundle of sticks with a hatchet A bundle of sticks tied together with a hatchet is called a fasces. A fasces is a bundle of rods containing an axe with the blade projecting, born before the Roman magistrate as an emblem of official power. In the ancient world, almost all ancient civilizations that have ever existed used the same symbol for divine power in government. The axe was always a symbol for political power. So today, if they're going to fire you, you're going to get the axe, because the axe symbolizes a final cutoff. Caesar is absolute master. A fasces is a bundle of sticks with a hatchet head. Now, why a bundle of sticks? Because one stick can be broken. There it is, a Roman fasces used on Roman coins. It was a symbol of power in the Roman Empire. Here, the lictor who held the fasces, this was an axe bound with a bundle of sticks, symbolized the official's power to punish and execute people. And the axe, of course, as I said, was always a very sacred symbol. Here's another symbol of the fasci from Rome. So you'll find the fasci all over in World War II. Here you have the crossing of the fasces, and you'll see the papal mitre, the papal symbol beneath the crossing of the fasces. It's a very, very powerful Roman symbol, the two fasces crossing. It's a Roman Catholic symbol. Reference books will tell you, all the encyclopedias will tell you, that Caesar's seat of power, where he sat to rule Rome, was on a hill called Capitoline Hill, or Capitol Hill. And on Capitol Hill, Caesar each morning would go up to be the official over the Roman Senate. Back to the axe again. In Egypt, the axe was God. In Rome, the axe was God. Again, the Roman fasces. The word fasces comes from the word fas, F-A-S. There are two words in the Roman language. One is J-U-S. J-U-S gives us the word justice. J-U-S in Latin is man's law. The law of man in Latin is called J-U-S, from which we get our word justice. But the word fas, F-A-S, that which is right and just in the sight of God, as distinguished from just, which is more frequently referred to as the right in the aspect of man-made law. So there are two kinds of law. There's fas, which is God's law, or just, which is man's law. And so the kings of Europe, kings of England, kings all over Europe, and princes, and all of the royalty, we say that they have a divine right of kings. But no one's ever stopped to think, what are you talking about divine right? That sounds like God appointed them. But when you're talking about God's law, you're talking about the Pope. You're talking about the Vatican. Because in Europe, all the royalty are made royalty by the blessing of the Pope. And so that's why you can say that you have a divine right, because the papacy and the Pope has anointed you to be King of England. So therefore you have a divine right. Why? Well, because he represents God, and he said you could be king. The problem is he could also say tomorrow night that God decided he don't want you to be king anymore. So it's a man-made system. The bundle of rods. That's why Jesus is holding the bundle of rods. Remember Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy? You'll see the fasci on his emblem. Here's the Italian flag with the fasci. The eagle is perched on the fasci, and Benito Mussolini's symbol is the eagle perched on a fasci. Again, fasci is divine law. Here's Benito Mussolini getting the imprimatur of the Pope. The Pope has declared Mussolini to be the divine emperor of the new Italian state. There was a concordat, a contract that Mussolini had to sign with the Pope to become emperor of Italy. Here they are signing it at the Vatican, signing the papers. Mussolini had a fascist friend named Adolf Hitler. Hitler was also a fascist. And between the two of them, there were two sticks. They gathered some other nations to come in with them, and then it became known as a coalition. Hitler and Mussolini, the eagle, the axe. On one side you'll see the fasci, and on the other side you'll see the eagle perched on the sun. How many of you saw Godfather 3, the third one? Remember Michael Corleone? He's in the Vatican and doing business with the Pope, directly with the Pope. And at the beginning of Godfather 3, Michael is in New York City being anointed in the Catholic Church by the cardinal in New York to make him a member of the Knights of Malta. Knights of Malta is a Masonic lodge within the Catholic Church. So when I hear all of this stuff about the Jews this and the Jews that, and the Jews are doing this and the Jews are doing that, and the Jews are responsible for this or that, my feeling is you better go back and do some homework. You don't have it yet. The Jews don't run anything, period. They're good with figures. They're good because they got good minds, and they're great with law and with figures and banking. And so the powers that be behind the world throne uses Jews because they're good. They know what they're doing. But the power, the real power, is in the Holy Father. The papacy symbols with the swastika, that's in the Vatican. Here's God. He's always pictured in a triangle. Three gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Always a triune God because it goes back to Egypt. The pyramid is a triangle. But you'll see he's holding in his hand, God is holding in his hand the earth. And one day God had a son. His name was Jesus. Later, God's son became King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So now he's the King of all kings and Lord of all lords. Why? Because God the Father created and owned the earth, and he holds the earth in his hands, so to speak. So if God owns the earth and all things on it, and he holds the earth in his hands, well, that's why the kings use that symbol, because that's the earth dominated by the Roman Catholic religion. And of course, the kings of the earth, the church was always behind the kings, always advising them, because the king realized that Jesus owns the earth. So don't do anything as a king until you talk to the Holy Father, because that's how you got to have that divine right. I would suggest that each one of you begin to re-look at spirituality from a different point of view. And I believe that there is a profound presence in the world that we call God, whatever God is, but I am totally sure that there is one. The only thing I would suggest that I know works, and this is very, very important, and I think you should listen to this and try it. Just understand that you are a biological battery. You are a biological electrical unit, like a radio or television, and you can receive waves from somewhere else. You can receive spiritual knowledge. I should explain to you this. Faith, the very word faith, is misunderstood in the Christian and Western world. Faith is not what you think it is. The very word faith is a word that means, and the only way I can describe it is that when you get up in the morning, you put your feet on the floor and you didn't look on the floor to see if there was a floor there. But you just got up and put your feet on the floor, not even thinking about it. Why didn't you check to see if there was a floor there? It just has always been there. That's what faith is. That's what faith means. To do something and just assume that God will be there. And it is there. The divine spirit in the universe is always there. It's just you that's been out. But the divine spirit is always there. And so seek and you will find. Ask and you will receive. Jesus saying you have not because you ask not. The Spirit of God is watching each one of us. You just didn't know it. And it's watching to see what you're going to do with your life. And if they don't want spiritual direction and protection, well, you have not because you ask not. It's extraordinarily powerful, extraordinarily brilliant, and profound in its presence in the universe. And we humans have not even begun to scrape the surface of what's out there. As one astronomer said, the universe is not only stranger than you imagine, it's stranger than you can imagine. I want to express this so you understand. I have the highest of respect for what we have commonly called God. I am totally convinced that there is a higher force in the universe, a matrix of power that is far, far more brilliant and powerful than anything we have ever contemplated.